From an advisor perspective, when we run a financial plan, we run what's called a Monte Carlo simulation. So basically, the plan will run 1,000 different simulations based on different market returns for different asset classes. And what we try to plan for is to avoid the worst case scenarios. We don't really plan for the best case. We make sure we're okay on the worst case side. So, we'll run those 1,000 simulations, and there may be, some percentage of them that you go to zero before, you're 95 or whatever our planning date is. So we have to, by nature, be, more conservative. If those, if the market turns out to run and, does huge numbers and you end up with,
Yeah.
tens of millions, right? That's a whole different, that's a different planning initiative because we're now talking about estate taxes and, your goals may change because maybe you want to do more charitable things, whatever that might be. And that's perfectly fine. We can always shift gears. To your point about, everything changing all the time, I try to make the analogy like your financial plan, it's like we're standing on the deck of a ship in a storm trying to throw a dart at a dartboard. There's so many different variables. Things are constantly changing. When we build your plan, 5 days later, if we rerun it again, it's going to look different because the asset values have changed. So what we try to do is we're trying to minimize as many of the variables as possible. Okay, which direction is the wind blowing? Okay, let's kind of account for that. Is the ship going up a wave or down a wave? Let's kind of account for that. So we try to minimize the variability there, but again, we can't see the future. So we have to try to plan for or avoid those scenarios where the plan doesn't look good. And a big piece of that beyond just the planning, the goals, the asset allocations, flexibility. We talk to clients about this all the time too. To be successful in retirement, you really want to try to go in with as much spending flexibility as you can, because in those years where the markets are down, it may behoove you to spend less in those years because we don't want to sell from depreciated assets. Of course, we try to have cash available. But again, we talk about try not to go into retirement with a bunch of fixed expenses, because fixed expenses are fixed expenses. Whether you have the money to pay them or not, they're going to be there. So the more you can minimize that, the less stressful, number one, retirement will be. And number two, probably the more successful you'll be, because if we do have a consecutive number of down years, you can adjust your spending.